Welcome to Side by Side, a podcast where I, Robert Kwong, take you inside conversations with artists, creatives, healers, and warriors taking the charge in their transformational story. Today's guests are technologist and disability activist Katelyn Lemay and indie game developer Nolan. Together, they are the creators of TarotBot, a tool for Discord, Slack, and co-host users to draw tarot cards with to-the-point simplicity, alongside carefully curated descriptions and definitions for each card. In this conversation, we unpack the dynamic between humanity and technology in 2023, their perspectives on automation and artificial intelligence, and the power of technology to empower arenas such as education, entertainment, and accessibility for everyday living. Hi guys, I'm so glad that we were able to connect with you all. And like I was mentioning before with Nolan, it's been a while since we've actually all connected with each other, and I've seen Katelyn a little bit more. But as a fan of both of yours and your work, I'm really excited to have a conversation to talk about technology and your backgrounds. So thank you for saying yes.
Of course.
Absolutely excited to do it.
So, before we get into TarotBot, I'm actually not sure about this, but did you two meet in college? How did you become friends?
Yeah, we met in college. Nolan was the roommate of someone who I worked with, and we are now closer than we are to the person who, oh man,
Oh,
we met through somebody who I worked with in college, yes.
Yeah. Katelyn does this a lot. They're a friend stealer.
It's true.
It's a whole long story, I'm sure.
And I was happy to be stolen.
What were your majors in school?
I studied linguistics and French and politics. I had 3 majors.
Ooh, oh my God, okay.
I studied computer science.
Gotcha. So then you two became friends, but you both have a rich background in technology, professionally and personally. So I'm really curious to get into the conversation about some things that I think have become so prevalent and vital. But first, maybe a little more fun thing. You two created this tool for people to be able to use tarot through online applications called TarotBot. I'd love for you to explain what it's for and how it works for people.
Nolan, do you want to talk about the background and then I can get into how it's used?
Sure. At least for me, the idea was born out of this weekly to fortnightly board games and bars night that Katelyn and I used to host. You know, we were both in New York City, and so periodically we'd say, okay, hey, we're going to be at this bar this time, and we're playing this game because we both love games.
Yeah.
And it got a lot, as you can imagine, carrying around a bunch of board games, right? We don't have a car to put them in. So I was carrying a lot of things in my bag and started trying to find ways, especially with games that we were playing repeatedly, to not have to bring the entire box of everything. So I started making apps to be like, okay, well, we need a little scorecard for this. So I made a little app on my phone to do that, or we need a randomizer for this certain thing. And make a little app for that, and could replace a lot of the physical components, and then still have the experience of playing the game, the social experience, without needing all of the components.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of this, also, Katelyn started doing a tarot card reading for each of these events, and would sometimes do tarot card readings at it for people who are there. And so they can tell you maybe a little bit more about how they got into tarot, but that was my experience with it. We were kind of like, well, why do we need to carry around a deck everywhere we need to go when we can just make a little app that'll do it for us?
Yeah, I love how smart minds think, like, why do we need to do all that when we can just have a quick solution based on our knowledge? I love that. Well, so Katelyn, I know you quite a bit. So you're the astro tarot enthusiast between the two of you. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what made you want to have a tool that's related to tarot in addition to having cards and decks that people already have access to? What was the opportunity for you?
Yeah, convenience and I think also accessibility. I'm someone who has arthritis and sometimes my hands hurt, so like shuffling a tarot deck and laying out the cards is not always pleasant or possible. So just being able to like, type a command into Slack or a social media platform instead of having to like do this like very painful process.
Yeah, I love the idea of using technology to empower accessibility and connection and convenience for people. And I know you both care about that as well. So the Tarot bot, when they use it, it's available on Discord, it can be used in Slack. How might someone engage with this tool?
It's on, yes, correct, Slack and Discord, and then also on co-host and Tumblr.
Mm,
So that's where we have our biggest audiences right now. But
yeah, I'm a
it's
Slack Tarot user.
yeah, good. Yeah, it's pretty simple across all of them. But the idea is, you just give it a prompt. So it'll be like /tarotbot. And then you can add some more information if you want, but you don't have to. It can just be a general reading. And it'll return you a card. And that card includes card art, and then the title, some keyword meanings associated with it. There's an alt text description for screen readers. And one of the coolest things I think that Katelyn added is it also has some emoji along with it to give you the general vibe of how you should feel about this reading.
I actually love those little shorthand descriptions and keywords associated with it. And I've been using it for a couple of years now, so I've gotten very familiar. On top of that, I believe there's a plan to roll out new artwork for people to enjoy when they're using these applications. Is that correct?
So this is actually, we commissioned custom art for Tarot Bot, so it'll be digital only.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we're doing a big revamp right now. Again, this started off as something that was very personal to us. It was just a tool that we were using, and slowly decided to open it up. And it's like, well, we're using it in our own friend Slack workspace, so might as well just host it on the Slack app store. And then for me, I also used it as a way to kind of like test out like making new bots on different platforms. And it's like, oh, I want to explore the Twitter API a little bit, so uh, you know, ported it to that, and then Discord, and then some other ones, and it kept going. We never told anybody about it really. We never advertised it. It's not something that we really want to make money off of.
Mm-hmm.
But it has thousands of users now across all the platforms,
Wow.
and it's something that a lot of people have told us that they've integrated into their daily routines. So that's really exciting.
Yes, and I'll be very vulnerable to say that, Tarotbot can also help you at 3 in the morning when you don't have access to much else except for your phone and having a panic attack. And maybe having a tool like this just to ground yourself in your thoughts is helpful when, it's during a time when you don't have much access to anything else. And it saved me on a couple occasions. So I really appreciate that. You both have experience in tech beyond Tarotbot. So this might not be as fun of a conversation for you all, given that I'm a layman, but so you can't really dive into the nitty gritty with some of these questions. But I've always had an interest in this field where its impact is just felt everywhere. So I feel like it's good to have some common language. How would you describe the relationship between humans and technology right now? Like, we're in a relationship, and how would you describe it?
Um, I think it is a problematic relationship in that I don't think that humans are always mindful of their part in the relationship. I think that can mean anything from like, getting more screen time than we want to not using certain tools properly or I could see even something like Tarotbot, like yes, it's great to help you get grounded and process some emotions, but also Tarotbot is not your therapist.
That's correct.
So yeah, I think it's one that we could all be a little more mindful about.
Definitely agree with that. In my work, my approach to technology is a lot more on the XR side. So doing weird, cool future tech with like augmented reality, virtual reality, volumetric displays, holograms, things like that. And what I always try to think about is technology is something that should be additive to our life and not replace our life. So it's a way to make a more informed decision about something, right? Or it's a way to get more information about where we are, or how we want to interact with the world. But it shouldn't be the thing that is all consuming. And trying to make sure that the way that I build apps, and the way that I build technology is mindful of that, and gives people kind of like off ramps, right? It isn't trying to continually hook them in. It's not, in my games, I don't try to make these like Skinner boxes and loot box machines that just like bring people in over and over again. I think that is hugely harmful. And so I want to make sure that it's something that you can use as a tool, and it should be easy for you to do whatever you want to do with it. But it shouldn't be the end all of your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. With Nolan using the term like replacement, and people having a lot of fears with how technology is progressing as far as automation and AI and all of that. And I know you both have teaching backgrounds and teaching experience, and you both care about education and learning. So it's one of those minefields, I know, where parents and children, it's a very love hate relationship between technology and humans right now. So, to you both, how can we better capitalize on technology relative to education and teaching and learning right now? Because, I know, Caitlin, this is kind of your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, so I work in educational technology, so it's an interesting question for me. I think there tends to be some like over solutionizing that happens, like thinking about how do we bring technology into teaching without necessarily investigating, well, why do we want to bring this tech into teaching? Because sometimes low tech is
Hmm.
the best way to go.
Mm,
I'm thinking about like people who learn by doing rather than by like
right.
being lectured, or and I guess you can also learn by doing with tech, but it's not always the first route to go down, which working in educational technology, it feels really counterintuitive to say that. But again, I think it goes back to needing to be mindful of what technology we're using and why.
Right.
And I mean, I'm Caitlin's on the forefront of this, and I work at NYU, which is a very slow moving institution. And so in a lot of cases, I would love more technology in the classroom. Even in things like when you are getting a computer science degree, right? Like not having to write out code by hand, because that's something that you basically will never do in your professional career. And the only reason that exists is because they are afraid of students cheating, right? They don't know how to evaluate students' mastery of the topic without limiting their access to technology, which to me makes no sense for a couple of reasons. One, if you don't trust your students to do the work, then, you know, what are you doing, right? That's the whole game here. This is especially in college and master's degrees,
Yeah.
they should be making an effort, right? You don't need to be scolding students for not putting in the effort. It's extremely obvious when they cheat using, Chat GPT, using just copy pasted programs, things like that. And if they don't want to engage with the material on that way, then that is their decision. But I think that it can also be useful. We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by limiting this access to technology because of work like what Katelyn is doing, that make it more accessible, that bring more people into the classroom and make it a more enriching experience. So that's something, I would love to push more for. Let's continue to iterate on this teaching process, and look at places where it is failing people, and see if there's opportunities within technology that we can bring more people in.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing kind of two sides of the coin in some ways in this conversation, and how it's important to think about the intentions behind your projects and whatever initiatives you're doing in the classroom and for students. And you also bring up the topic of AI that teachers and students have to figure out now with, even though it's not the advent, it feels like the floodgates have opened. Even though we've talked about AI forever, something has shifted where it's now available to the public and to the markets. So I'm really curious to hear about your perspectives about AI. Are the fears valid about replacement? And maybe as a follow up, are there things that humans can do that AI cannot achieve yet?
Sure. First of all, I apologize. My dog is very needy right now, so you might hear her in the background.
Hi,
Hi,
Um,
Georgia,
Georgia.
fellow Chinese immigrant.
yes. I think on the topic of AI, I really like what Nolan said earlier about technology being additive rather than a replacement for anything. I think that things like ChatGPT can be super useful. For example, I will use ChatGPT to generate reflection questions for tarot cards that I draw. I'm not asking ChatGPT to interpret the tarot cards for me, but it can kind of give me something that will make me think more deeply about a tarot card. So again, I'm not trying to replace my knowledge of tarot or replace a tarot reader, but it's something that adds to the experience.
Right, right. So it is something that you can use on an everyday basis. Are you someone personally who's fearful with how quickly AI has become available and normalized to the public?
I don't come at it from a place of fear. I think people are kind of using AI poorly. Like AI will just make up facts and will make up sources. And so you as a human still have to double check what the output is. There's definite there's a valid concern in the artistic community around like AI generated art. I definitely feel the tension there. And I think ChatGPT and AI art are kind of separate if we're talking
Mm-hmm.
ethically, morally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just focus on like ChatGPT. But yeah, I don't think that it's replacing anyone anytime soon. Someone who I know said that at best, ChatGPT is like an intern. You can give it basic instructions and expect that it'll do a pretty okay job, but you still have to double check what it does.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I the way I view it is that both people and AI are unreliable with the information that they give you, but it's much harder to check your sources with AI. Probably go with people
That's such a good point.
for right now. And like things like the Bing search will also include the context in which they got their information. But if you don't already know the answer, then you shouldn't rely on whatever AI gives you. But I think that, like Katelyn said, it can be useful in terms of, tarot and other situations for getting you to reflect on your own, experience, giving you a different way to think about the problem that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, sure, why not? That can be useful for, you can also talk to a rubber duck, but AI can be a tool here that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for distinguishing between AI as it relates to art and creative expression and humanities, and then also just AI as a utility tool to sort of aid humans in different tasks, for example. Yeah, it's so prevalent now with how people negotiate their lives these days, even if the full impact has not been felt yet. But it's really starting to affect things. For example, I know that, for writers, if you've read AI scripts that are completely AI, they're not good. And so, like you point out, they can be additive, but not without something like a creative team or some kind of foundation before the fact. So, are there things that then you feel like AI cannot achieve yet that humans are capable of? For example, I read somewhere that AI is not capable of something like curiosity quite yet. And this is a buzzword, but also empathy. Does that make sense to you? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. An AI is not naturally curious or empathetic. You can try to program it so it mimics curiosity and empathy, but there's still a human behind that making that happen. And humans are imperfect, right? So even if you try to make an empathetic AI, it's going to fall short because you as a human are going to fall short at times.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a difficult question, because technology is always evolving. And so if you like pick out things like, oh, AI is bad at this, in whatever 5-10 years, maybe it will be good at that. But I think it's better to frame it as a conversation about what we want out of it. We are trying to use it as a tool to automate the things we don't want to do, then I think that's great. We should go for that, right? Like if you don't want to, it's used a lot for writing code. And I think that if you don't want to write that boilerplate code, go ahead, use AI. That's not hurting anything. But when we start to try and automate the things that we do want to do, when we try to automate art, when we try to automate, writing screenplays and making movies and doing the things that enrich the human experience, then why are we doing that, right? What's the point
Right.
if we are not making our life better through technology?
Yeah, that's such a good point. You're kind of pointing to the fact, I believe, that AI, it's almost like some people want AI to live for us, but you're also talking about experiences and things that we do just a part of living our life. So, what is the intention behind having AI replace you having this human experience just because it can be automated? That's such a good point. Oh, wow. So, Nolan, your background is that you're an indie game developer. What is that arena like? And as far as tech goes, what are some things going on related to the gaming world that's got you really excited and passionate right now?
Sure, yeah, that's I love making games, and I wish more people would buy them so I could do that as my primary thing. That's sort of what I do on the side right now, freelancing and teaching as well. What I really love doing across all of my work is blending this sort of digital and physical experience into one. And so I love using digital games. A lot of my games so far have been on mobile, but using the unique affordances of mobile. Not just the fact that everyone has them in their pocket at all times, so you can, have games that fit into your life, but the fact that they're connected to the internet, the fact that they have cameras and microphones and accelerometers and things in them, and using that to facilitate gameplay where there wasn't gameplay before. So that's the sort of thing that really excites me, and trying to give people, a fun experience in something that they couldn't necessarily do without it.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think your latest release is kind of woo woo meets tech. It's called Silly Seance. And when I saw
That's
that,
right.
I was
Yeah.
like, that looks so fun. Blending just the woo with tech always tickles my fancy. So I love that.
Yeah, I released a game on Halloween, yeah, last year called Silly Seance, which is a party game played on a Ouija board. But it's on your phone, and so you are conveying a message to other people who may be in the same place as you, but may not. And the only way you can talk is by moving your little planchette, your cursor around on this digital Ouija board. So it gives you that analog experience of, everyone around a Ouija board and you don't know what it's going to say, but it's facilitated through the technology.
Oh,
I can confirm that it's really fun and definitely
Thank you.
silly.
we love it. So, Katelyn, you're a disability advocate and activist, and you even just spoke about how TerraBot, the advent of that, actually came out of you just addressing a need of yours. So, a question I have is, what are some things that neurotypical and able-bodied individuals tend to get wrong when they try to support those with disabilities?
I think in general, I try to give grace to people who are trying, right? But if we're asking what they could do better, I think just asking people what they need rather than assuming is always the way to go. Also, I think just holding space for people. So being disabled can be hard, being chronically ill can be hard, and sometimes you just need to complain about your health for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it may not feel like you're doing anything big by allowing space for that, but it can actually be pretty isolating to be chronically ill or disabled. So to be able to like share that with somebody can be really meaningful. But again, not everybody is going to want that. So you always want to ask rather than assume.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the way that technology can help bridge that gap oftentimes. And it's one of the places where being able to play party games with my friend in Ohio online, virtually, is such a nice privilege in many ways because you can bypass our challenges and disabilities. So I was looking up some of Caitlin's Medium articles because I'm a nerd, and there's one point that I saw you highlight, which seems very obvious, but it's about how small details make a big difference in terms of UX and UI. Do either of you have an example with how this concept can show up, especially since the way we see tech introduced to the public is often groundbreaking and trailblazing, and here you're looking at like the human experience through a microscope. So, do you have an example of this idea?
Oh, interesting. I might have to think about this one for a minute.
I can give a quick example from Terrobot, at least. So, as you may guess, we're not the only ones who have made Tarot bots and Tarot plugins and things across even the platforms that we're on. But something that we heard a lot from our users that they like about our Tarot bot over others is that it's extremely simple. And a lot of the other bots try and do all these things, right? They try to make it possible to do complicated things all the time. And something that at least I try to think about when we're designing systems is, you want to make complicated things possible, but you want to make the simple things extremely easy. You can get one card reading. That's all you need for 90% of your situations. Why would you complicate your user experience with all of these other things that most people don't need, right? The reason they like our bot is because we just don't have all that extra stuff. And that's intentional.
Yeah, that's true because I have tried other apps and different platforms, and sometimes you just want to draw a quick card just out of curiosity or reflex, and it could present you with a lot of information and stimuli and visual and data. It's like, to me, watching the opening of an anime or something, and it's a lot to digest for just one card. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, and I think I've also tried a bunch of tarot apps and none of them quite grab me again because they do try to do too much and they don't necessarily do any of it well. Also, it seems kind of shallow, but if something looks nice, that goes a long way as well. I think, there's only so much you can do within Slack and with Discord, but I think we've tried to make it look as nice as we can. It's simple, it's not like visually busy. I'm really excited for the new art that's coming out because I think even more so it like streamlines what we know about each of the tarot cards, and there's like an interesting fresh take on the art as well. So I'm really excited for that change coming up.
And I think also, Caitlin, with your descriptions that you've written, right, there's been a lot of effort in trying to pare them down and, kind of modernize them and remove gendered pronouns, make them uh, more accessible, make them more approachable, and just keep it really focused on how can these connect to people as easily as possible.
Yeah, it's true. I've seen Katelyn's hard work making the glossary and checking all of the descriptions. It wasn't just a copy and paste job, everyone. This was something that took a lot of time, and you definitely take it seriously, Katelyn. So, and it's a benefit to the users. Last but not least, I have a very broad question for the both of you because I don't want to take up too much of your time. And thank you for your answers so far. There's so many that just jump started a whole lot of thinking for me. But what are some things related to tech that you feel like people should really pay attention to the next few years? Some of these items may have already come up in our conversation already, but anything else that we haven't quite focused on yet?
I think something to be aware of is this sort of like creep of tech into all areas of life. So things like therapy apps, people have had bad experiences with them. Therapy is not really supposed to be an app where you can text someone 24/7, but it's one of those like, we're bringing technology into this just to bring technology into this. It's not that there's any specific trend that I would say, look out for this, or, definitely get on top of that. I would just say to be really mindful and apply that critical thinking anytime a new opportunity to use tech approaches you, sorry, ask yourself, is this the right use of technology? How is this going to help me? Again, I think Nolan's rule about like, is this trying to replace something or is it adding value?
Yeah, just jumping off of that a little bit, I think I've seen a lot of times people say, like, oh, this is inevitable, so you might as well get on now. Well, nothing is inevitable. And I think that all it takes is a shift in our collective imagination to decide, hey, this actually isn't enriching our lives. Or, maybe we don't need to give away all of our user data just to post on a website. That we can push back against these things collectively and make sure that the tech is only being integrated into our lives in ways that we want.
Absolutely. Boy, I want to do a part two with y'all sometimes because your answers just provoke so much follow up reflections for me, but I don't have time to process that all at once because I'm a wee baby.
Happy to come back.
So, thank you both for your time. And maybe a last question that I just came up with. Are either of you interested in those 3,500 Apple Vision goggles that were just announced?
The Apple Vision Pro?
Yes, yeah.
It sounds like a great way to get motion sickness to me.
So yeah, this is, I think, a great example of what we were talking about, where what is this doing for us, right? We can think about it. To move slightly next to it, with like the Oculus, the Meta Quest 2, I think that that's a great VR headset. And I think that it pretty much solved all of the problems that were present in the Oculus DK1, right? Like it's not tethered, there's no screen door effect, you have enough resolution for it. The tracking is really good for both your head and your controllers. It doesn't overheat. Like it's a great VR headset. Why isn't everyone using it then? Well, maybe the problem is that people don't like having TV strapped to their face, right? So that I don't think really that headsets are going to be the future. And even though Apple spent a lot of money trying to pretend that their VR headset is an AR headset, isn't really going to change that, right? Like we already have great ways to watch movies. We already have great ways to send emails that we don't really need this for. And they haven't really presented any new compelling use cases, in my personal opinion, for why we should use it, right? So I think that this is not an additive technology. I think they'll still probably sell whatever, 500,000. It's going to be a good example of this, yeah. But I don't see it being the future. I don't see it replacing the way that we interact with the world.
It's also funny to me because so much of tech right now is about making the tech itself as small and unobtrusive as possible. Like, you want your phone to be super thin and you want it to fit in your pocket. You want your laptop to fit in your bag and be super slim. But then there are these like big clunky headsets. It just seems like the opposite of what everything else is trying to do. And I think maybe that's part of why it hasn't taken off, because it is so obtrusive and it's not like seamlessly integrating into your life. It's like this big honking headset that you have on.
Yeah, I need the industry giants to figure out the how to wear 3D glasses when you're already wearing glasses thing. If you can't figure out that problem,
Agreed.
We are way jumping the shark here to some more advanced propositions here. So for glasses users. Anyway, thank you, Katelyn and Nolan, for your time today. This was so eye-opening for me. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for tuning in. Listeners are welcome to connect with me over Instagram and LinkedIn. You just have to search my name, and I love to hear from you. If you'd like to learn more about my work as a coach and artist, please visit www.robertkwonghome.com.